Well, I've got to admit, my musical tastes vary and have varied over the years. Lately, I have been into not like old country, but old school country. Any of you old school? Okay, nobody. All right. Well, so lately I've been into old school country, and there's a few song titles that I've run across that are way too good not to share. So I've got to share a few of them with you. The first one is Drop Kick Me Jesus Through the Goalpost of Life. All right. So in case you're wondering if Jesus was a football player, apparently he was. The next one, I fell into a pile of you and got love all over me. Where's my wife? Honey, a pile of you, and you're not even in the room for me to talk about you, right? The next one, if my nose were full of nickels, I would blow it all on you. I mean, nothing says love like a nose full of nickels. One of my favorites, you're the reason our kids are so ugly. Now this is a Loretta Lynn, Conway Twitty, like you gotta just listen to it. It's actually not too bad. But one of my all-time favorite songs that you might easily recognize, it starts out and it says that the devil went down to Georgia. He was looking for a what? Soul to steal. He was in a bind. He was way behind, and he was looking to make a deal. Well, on that note, welcome to Easter Sunday 2021. So for the past 2,000 years, the church has had a tradition on Easter Sunday, and those that follow the way of Jesus, they will look at the other person and they will say, he is risen, and then they will look back and they will say, he is risen what? Indeed. All right, so if you're sitting in a coffee shop this morning, if you're at home, if you're in the room, here we go. He is risen. He is risen indeed. Well, we've been in a teaching series, if you're new with us, over the last 4 weeks, and today culminates our 5th week in a series that we call The Hills. And we've looked at some hills or mountains in the Bible and examined them, studied them, and seen, okay, how does this point towards where we are today? So we looked at the hill where God gave the 10 Commandments. We looked at a lot of different mountains and hills in the Old Testament, and we begin to see, you know what, all of these actually point towards Easter Sunday and the hill that we're going to look at today, which is called Calvary. But before we dive in to Calvary and what happened there, we're going to have to go back a little bit, and we're going to have to go all the way back to the beginning of time. So Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. Genesis is the first book of the Bible, chapter 1, verse 1. And it starts out and it says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And so, in short, today, we could say as summary that God made it. God made everything there is. He made the earth, he made the sky, he made the fish in the sea, he made the 100 billion or so stars that are just in our Milky Way galaxy. He made all of it. He made the hill that we're talking about today in the hill of Calvary. Genesis 1:27 talks about the apex of his creation, and that's us. So Genesis 1:27, so God created human beings in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female. He created them, and he created everything perfect. And everything was as it should be. It was a perfect world. There was God, there was Adam and Eve, there was the Garden of Eden. There was, I'm sure Chick-fil-A sweet tea was there on tap. Like they could just drink it even in the morning, even on Sundays. I mean, it was a perfect world. There was nobody talking or texting on Android devices, because we all know in a perfect world there would be no Android devices. Now, before the devil went down to Georgia, he went down to the Garden of Eden and he took on the form of a serpent. And this serpent, well, the serpent began to do what the Satan or the evil one, Satan does, and he begins to tempt. And he had a conversation with the world's first humans, Adam and Eve. And at that point, sin entered the world. And so if God made it, then Adam and Eve is our representatives to all humanity because of their choices, their choice to listen to the serpent and then respond in a negative way against the will of God. As a result of that, sin enters the world. And so you could say then that God made it, but we broke it. We broke it. We broke what was initially running perfectly, and it didn't take long at all. In the second chapter of the Bible, we see how amazing life was. But then the very beginning of chapter 3 of Genesis, all of a sudden, everything starts to go awry. In Genesis 3, verse 1 says, one day, and you guys, this is how it happens, right? It's just a regular, ordinary, everyday type of day. And all of a sudden the wheels come off. Like you're driving the kids to school and the guy cuts you off and you give him the one finger wave. And then all of a sudden you are reminded that the kids are in the car, right? And so we're not to tell mom what just happened. And it was just a regular, ordinary, everyday day. And you rarely do you think about the implications of what just happened. It just happens. And we react. And like a serpent, sin just kind of creeps up on us, doesn't it? I mean, it just slithers into our life, and we're like, what were those words that just came out of my mouth? Like, why did I just unleash a torrent of anger on a person that I love? Why is it always a slippery slope when it comes to lust? That there's bitterness that I'm harboring in my heart, and I don't really understand it, and I thought I'd gotten through that, and it just kind of popped up again on just a regular, one day, every ordinary day. It's the self-centeredness about making life about us. Well, this is where Adam and Eve found themselves. And here they began to rebel against God. Verse 6, the woman was convinced. She saw that the tree was beautiful and its fruit looked delicious, and she wanted the wisdom it would give her. So she took some of the fruit and she ate it. And then she gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it too. And at that moment, their eyes were open, and they suddenly felt shame at their nakedness. So they sewed fig leaves together to cover themselves. So we know that the devil went down to Georgia. We see here in chapter 3 of Genesis that he went to the Garden of Eden. And I've become very well aware that he's in northern Alabama too. And I know that because just this week, my son and my daughter get off the elementary bus at the house, and then I'm a little bit late coming home. And so my wife had already made it home. And then I hear the story. And as the story went, my kindergarten son, who knows that you always listen to the bus driver, always, was apparently not listening to the bus driver, and he was standing up in his seat on the bus, to which his older sister helped to communicate that to mom when mom got home. And so mom had to sit down with kindergarten son Titus and said, Titus, you know that we don't stand up on the bus, and you know that we respect authority and we listen to the bus driver, and this isn't going to happen again. Yes, Mom, I'm sorry, I know. And then apparently, Mom turns her back, and when she turns her back, he does this. And he begins to silently mock Mom. Now, I think what my 6-year-old had forgotten is that his mom is a redheaded Irish girl from Chicago. And what played out next, I don't want to share with you this morning just because it's a PG service, but you don't do that, right? And I know that we are all born with sin because I have kids. And as a result, we all inherit. As Adam and Eve is our representatives, we all inherit their brokenness and the results of their choices. In Romans chapter 3, the Apostle Paul writes about this, and he highlights how God made it and we broke it. Early on in chapter 3, he says, it's clear enough, isn't it, that we're sinners, every one of us in the same sinking boat. with everyone else. I mean, that's what life is like if we don't have Christ in our hearts. We don't have that personal relationship. You know, when I was a kid, I was born into a fourth generation waterfowl hunting family. And so I really had no choice in the matter. But when I was a kid, I would go out in the boat with my dad, and as he was duck hunting, I was like watching the birds and playing around, right? And so they decided, my dad and my great uncle decided, you know what? We're not going to buy our next hunting boat. We're going to build our own boat, and we're going to build it out of wood, and it's going to be amazing. And so they did, and that was what we would hunt out of. And then finally, season 2 rolls around, and I'm looking in the boat, and I'm seeing that water is now in the boat, and it's not supposed to be in the boat. And as the seeping water in the boat problem began to get worse and worse, I found that the next day, my great uncle had brought this from home, and it was a bleach bottle that he had just cut conveniently the bottom out of, and he handed it to me, and he said, Brian, today is going to be an exciting experience for you. You're going to help bail the boat out as we're hunting, right? And so then I had something to occupy my time, and so I found that as the years went by, the bailing got more and more frequent, and no matter what we would find at the hardware store, nothing seemed to permanently stop the leak that would sift and sink ultimately the boat. And so finally it came to the point to where my dad and my great uncle said, this boat is not salvageable, and they put it on the burn fire pile. Well, it's interesting that Paul uses this same analogy of the same sinking boat with everyone else. You know, as sin creeps up in our life, we take on water and we take on water and we take on water. And no matter how often we bail and the type of mechanism that we use to bail, we can never ultimately seem to fix the issue. And so we sink, and we sink in our sin and our selfishness and our hurts and our habits and our hang-ups. And then Paul keeps talking about it. He says, but in our time, something new has been added. What Moses and the prophets witnessed to all those years has happened. The God setting things right that we read about has become Jesus setting things right for us. And not only for us, but for everyone who believes in him. For there is no difference between us and them in this, since we've compiled this long and sorry record as sinners, both us and them, and prove that we are utterly incapable of living the glorious lives that God wills for us. God did it for us out of sheer generosity. He put us in right standing with himself, a pure gift. He got us out of the mess that we're in and restored us to where he always wanted us to be. And he did it by means of Jesus Christ. In short, when it comes to our sin and our shame, we're in a bind. And we've all sinned, and we're all leaking, and we're all exhausted at trying to bail out our own boat. But God created an answer. He created the answer in a form of a person. And so if God made it and we broke it, then Jesus on Easter Sunday morning came along and he fixed it. Jesus fixed it. If you say, Brian, what's the summary of the whole Bible? I would say God made it, and then we broke it, and then God fixed it in the form of Jesus Christ. How did he do it? Through a hill called Calvary. The story of Jesus is recorded in the first 4 books of the New Testament, and we call those Gospels. And it's about the life and the ministry of Jesus. And today we're going to look at Luke's gospel, and we're going to land the plane in chapter 24, just the first couple of verses of chapter 24 in Luke. And Luke by trade was a physician. He was a doctor, and he meticulously would walk through the life of Jesus, and he would highlight things just so that, especially if you're a skeptic, Luke wrote his gospel particularly to those that weren't believers. And maybe that's some of you today. Maybe you're skeptical at this whole Jesus thing and rising from the grave thing, and you're not really sure about the whole faith issue. And Luke writes right to you, and he tells about the death, the burial, and the resurrection of Christ. And that's what today is all about. Friday was about his death. Today is about his resurrection. We were driving around on Good Friday, and my kids were asking me questions, and I was trying to explain the death of Christ and the meaning behind that. And it reminded me that all of us at some point in our family lives will experience the passing away of someone special. And I began to think, well, when's the first time that really happened to our family? And a couple of years ago, we had a neighbor in Wheaton, Illinois, as we were living there at the time. And she said, hey, I know your middle child is an animal lover, and we have a guinea pig. I don't know if you ever thought about having a guinea pig, but we have a guinea pig, and we would love to gift you that guinea pig. And we're like, well, that would be amazing. So we talked to Lily, and she's like, oh, I'd love to have a guinea pig. And, well, what's his name? His name's Jeffrey. Oh, guinea pig named Jeffrey. That's amazing, right? So we adopted Jeffrey into our family, and Jeffrey lived in Lily's room. And about 2 weeks go by, everything's going great. And all of a sudden, Lily comes out screaming and crying, saying that Jeffrey is not eating his dinner. And we go in, and Jeffrey not only is not eating, Jeffrey is not breathing. And Jeffrey, we didn't know how old Jeffrey was. The original owners didn't know how old Jeffrey was, but apparently Jeffrey found it his time to transition off into the land where all good guinea pigs go. And so we took Jeffrey and we gave him a proper burial there on the right behind the house. And so we said the only solution here, the only way to heal the pain is to go find another guinea pig. And so we went to the pet store, and we got another guinea pig, and this guy's name was Ewok, and Ewok was gonna take us into the next millennia, right? And I wish I'm making this up, and I'm not. 2 weeks later, my wife's at work, I'm at the church, and we get a call, and my mother-in-law is actually crying. I don't really know why she was crying. And she was crying. I mean, she was kind of teared up, and I guess my daughter had come out of her room, and now Ewok was not breathing, and Ewok had graduated on to the land where all good guinea pigs go. And so at that point, we said, we are not the family for guinea pigs. Okay? I think God was communicating a clear message. You know, we all face death, and we all face anxiety, and we all face fear. And Easter is about us facing all of these realities in our life and saving us from them all. That's what Easter's about. Luke 24, verse 1, on the first day of the week, very early in the morning, Luke says, look, the Bible doesn't waste words. God never wastes any words. Nothing happens in God's universe by accident. And so very early in the morning on the first day of the week, I don't know if you remember back to what we read earlier, but in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, it said God created the heavens and the earth in the beginning. So what's happening here? Well, there's a new reality that's coming into play. It's the first day of the week, and something fresh and new is happening here in the story. Easter brings with it a new world and a new reality for all of us. I don't know if I have any Narnia fans watching or in the room, but in the Chronicles of Narnia, Aslan is the lion, and he's supposed to be the one that comes in and saves the day. And well, the bad guys in the story, they do what bad guys do, and they capture him, and they bind him to the stone table, and they beat him mercilessly, and in the end, he dies. And that's it for Aslan. And then we find later in the story that he's back from the dead. And the word starts getting out, hey, Aslan's not dead. No, he was dead. No, he's not dead. And he has a conversation with the kids, some of the main stars of the show, and he's talking about how he came back from life because they want to know, Aslan, how did this happen? How did you come back? We saw you die. And he says, way back at the beginning of time, there was a rule written into the universe where if a person who had committed no treachery died in an innocent person's stead on this stone table, then the stone table would crack. And he said this, then death itself would begin to work backwards. Death itself would begin to work backwards. Theologian John Owens called it the death of death. With the resurrection, it was God saying, look, the world doesn't have to be like this anymore. Death doesn't have to define you. Pain doesn't have to define you. Sin doesn't have to define you. Anxiety and fear, they don't have to define you because guess what? There's a new day of the week. There's a new creation that has come. Verse 4, on the first day of the week, verse 1 of chapter 24 of Luke, on the first day of the week, very early in the morning, the women took the spices they had prepared and went to the tomb. They went to the tomb because Jesus was actually dead. I've been there, and there are no bones to be found. He was dead for 3 days. The big stone had been rolled away from the front of it. And I love how Luke records they took the spices that they had prepared. It was a day just like any other day. They were discouraged. They were down. They got up early. They prepped everything they needed to prepare for Jesus' body and for taking care of him on this normal, everyday type of day. They're just living their life. And God interrupts it. I mean, that's the story of Easter, you guys. Like we're just being a dad. We're being a mom. We're doing our thing. We're worrying about what we're going to eat for lunch. We're worrying if we left the thing on or is it off. Or like we're just doing life. We're a student. We're at school. We have practice. And all of a sudden, Jesus shows up and he interrupts. I mean, it's like Christmas, right? God interrupts a teen girl's life and says, hey, great to meet you. You're going to have a baby, and it's going to be the Savior of the world. And by the way, here's what you're going to call it. And by the way, you don't really have a say in the matter. This is just kind of what God does. I interrupt your life, and it's going to be great, trust me. But this is your new reality, and we've never been the same since. God specializes in taking the normal, the mundane, the everyday, and he does Easter in our life. What if Jesus could fix the leaks in our life? What if Jesus could take, that selfishness that just life is always about you and those that you love have communicated that, and what if he could take that and begin to work it backwards? That greed that you have that you don't really want to admit, but there's always more out there, and there's always the next thing that you want, and you get it, and it's cool for a while, and then it wears out, and then it's like the next thing, and you keep leaking. And what if Easter could happen in your life, and things could begin to work backwards the way they were actually originally intended to be in the world and in our life? Luke chapter 24, verse 2, they found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they had entered, they did not find the body of Jesus. Look, this separates people that are the people of Jesus from every other religion in the world. Can't find the bones. They're gone because he's risen. You see, following Jesus is not a set of ideas or a philosophy or even a religion. Like Christianity isn't elitism. Like if we're just smart enough, we can figure it all out. If we're just strong enough, we can earn our way in. But it's a historical fact that Jesus rose from the grave. He's not there. And because of his resurrection, our sin problem and the death problem and the brokenness problem and all the issues and the hurts that we have can find their fix in Christ. He absorbs all of our pain. He absorbs all of our suffering. He absorbs all of our hurts, he overcame so that we can overcome. God made it. We broke it. Jesus, well, he fixes it. In 1988, Kellogg's they were losing a lot of market share to other cereals, and especially with cornflakes. Any cornflake fans out there? You guys like cornflakes? Like 3 of you? Okay, that's what I figured. Okay. Well, they were having a problem in 1988, just like they're having a problem maybe today. I don't know, but Kellogg, they got all their smart people together in a room, and they said, "Hey, how are we going to fix this problem? We're losing market share with Kellogg with cornflakes to people that are starting to put like nuts in there and berries in their cereal. I mean, they're really varying things up here, and we've got to figure this out." And so they came up with an idea, and they said, "You know what? We're going to take our cereal, we're going to put it in front of a skeptic, an unbeliever, and we're going to see what they think." And thank goodness for YouTube. We don't have to go back to 1988. We don't have to jump in the time machine. We just have it here for you on the screen. So turn your eyes to the screen.
Oh, this is great. No fruits, no nuts, no marshmallows. You call this a cereal? Looks like a bestseller to me. I mean, there's nothing here but flakes. It's so simple. But I like it. Hey, maybe that's the point. I mean, they'd mess it up if they added other stuff to it. Nice cereal.
Kellogg's Cornflakes.
Cornflakes?
Taste them again for the first time.
Man, I saw that commercial this week, and it made me think, man, I've been in church as long as I can remember. And some of you, like you're there. Like maybe you grew up in church. Maybe you've done the church thing for a while. But over time, you just start leaking, right? And you bail a little bit, and you bail a little bit, and then finally you kind of get tired of bailing, and you just, like people say crazy things. They say crazy things like, "Well, this is just how I am," after they said something incredibly mean and cutting to you. It's just the truth. No, it's just you're mean, right? And then you leak, and you just begin to deal with the water in the boat. And the whole time, Jesus is saying, "Look, I know you tasted me at one point, maybe when you were a kid or when you were little, but look, you need to taste me again for the very first time. No nuts, no berries, just me, nothing attached to it, just Jesus, just the resurrection." It's powerful. And if you'll begin that relationship with me, if you'll start it afresh and anew, if you'll taste it again for the first time, I'll start doing a work in your life. I'll start fixing all the leaks. I'll work from the inside out. It won't happen overnight. It'll be a process, just like any other great relationship that's amazing. It never snaps, and it's amazingly all put together. But we'll get there. But it starts in a moment like this, on Easter Sunday, remembering that we serve one that is risen from the grave and has defeated the serpent, has defeated Satan, sin, and death. Let the devil come to Alabama. We've got the answer for him. God, as we close out our time together, God, we want to experience you again for the very first time. God, there's some in the room here that desperately need to do some business with you. They need to talk to you. They need to allow their heart to go to a place that maybe they haven't been to in a while. God, may that happen in this moment. God, may we begin a process of coming back to you and allowing you to take the homemade baler that we've got and throw it in the garbage and begin to plug the leaks that we just seemingly can't do on our own. And God, that's That's the marriage that we've got that isn't near as healthy as it should be. That's the selfishness that resides in our heart, that really everything in our universe revolves around me. That's the unforgiveness. That's the brokenness. That's the hopelessness. That's the loneliness that even in a room like this, with this many people, God, there's lonely people that are in need of you and a fresh start, a fresh taste. So God, as we worship you, we give over the next few moments to you. We surrender our hearts to you.